Hello and welcome back to another Eduonics tutorial. In this section, we'll be going over the different tools in Photoshop, and in this video, we'll be going over the manipulation tools. In my video on selection tools, I went over how to select specific areas of an image, isolating the pixels so they may be manipulated without affecting the rest of the image. Now that we know how to select a layer's contents, we're going to go over the tools we can use to manipulate those contents. Let's just get right into it. The first manipulation tool we have is the crop tool, directly below our quick selection and magic wand. When we select it, a bounding box appears around the edges of our canvas. But this time, there are these brackets that appear around the edges. And when we hover over those edges, our cursor changes into a double arrow. When we click and drag, we can see our original image dimensions are being grayed out, and our new image dimensions remain in full color. I'm going to hit Enter on my keyboard to commit this cropping. But watch what happens when we go back to our Move tool and try to move our image away from those edges. Those parts of the image that we cropped have been deleted and are no longer available. I want to undo my cropping, so I'm going to go back up and click the History button to reveal the History panel. The History panel is listing my most recent changes to this document, and we can see that crop is currently highlighted. To undo my crop, I'm just going to click the option above it. This is bringing us back to a history state in the document before I made my crop. We're going to go over the history panel in more detail later. For now, let's go back and click the crop tool again. I'm going to drag one of these edges further inside like I did before, but I'm not going to hit Enter just yet. This time, pay attention to these tool options in the top panel, and notice that our option to delete cropped pixels is checked by default. Go ahead and uncheck this. Then go over and click the check mark to commit this crop. Now, let's select the Move tool and try moving our image again. You can see that we cropped the visible portion of the canvas, but the full image still remains behind it. This allows us to tweak the dimensions of the canvas without deleting anything we might need later. Let's go back to our crop tool this time by hitting the C key on the keyboard, and then click the canvas. We can see that the invisible portions of the image that go beyond our canvas are visible within the crop window. And if we hover beyond the edges of the crop selection, our cursor changes into a curved double arrow. This is indicating that we can click and rotate freely. If we want to rotate in perfect angles, we can just press and hold the Shift key to constrain our rotation by 15-degree increments. Let's go back up to the tool options and cancel this current crop operation. To get to our next crop tool, right-click the current crop tool to bring up our options, and click the Perspective Crop tool. This one gets really trippy. Instead of just changing the width, height, and rotation, this tool actually changes the perspective of the whole canvas. Let's start by clicking in the canvas to set our first point. And as we click more points, we see a perspective grid stretching out. Now that we've made our 4 points, we'll click Enter. Now you can see that the tool has basically taken what was inside of our crop zone and stretched it to fit on a straight rectangular plane as our new canvas. Pretty trippy. I'm going to switch to a different photo that can better illustrate how the next tool works. Let's move on to our next tool by right-clicking the current crop tool and selecting the Slice tool. The Slice tool is mainly used in web design when you want to split an image into multiple images to assign as buttons for a web page. This photo is perfect to demonstrate this tool because it has plenty of open space between subjects for us to slice. I'm going to start by drawing a box around the first girl from her bottom right. Now, as I move towards the edge of the canvas, you can see that Photoshop wants to automatically snap this to align perfectly. This slice that we just made has a number on its top left, number 1. When using slices, they need to cover the entire surface of the image, so Photoshop has automatically made 2 more slices to fill the gaps. Let's continue with our next slice. Oops, I started the slice too far from the edge and it didn't snap into position properly. To fix this, simply hover over to the edge of the slice and drag it till it snaps where it should be. Now when I make this slice, you can see that it doesn't line up to our slices on top. This is not an issue at all. We can go ahead and proceed with our last slice. Okay, now our slices take up the whole image and it's ready to save for web. Oh, what about this mistake I made up here? Using the slice tool, I'm no longer able to drag its edge to fix it. This is where our next tool comes in. Right-click the Slice tool and then click the Slice Select tool. Now we can select our third slice and fix its bottom edge. If we compare our slices with the numbers on their top left, we can confirm that there are 6 slices for our 6 subjects. To save these, go up to File, Save for Web. Now this is going to open up a very extensive dialog box. We're not going to go into this right now, but it sort of gives you an idea of the type of support Photoshop provides for web pages. I'm going to cancel this and then close this document. Okay, now we're getting into something a little more fun. So I'm going to pull up a different photo I can work with. Here's a woman who looks like she might be getting some surgical work done, as she has these marks on her face. A great way to remove marks like these, or other blemishes, is with the Spot Healing Brush tool. All we have to do is select the Spot Healing Brush tool and click and drag over one of these marks to remove it. What's happening here is that Photoshop is using its best guess as to what I want to remove, and it's sampling another area of the image to cover it. This tool is great for correcting the minor details. But you may find that if you get a little carried away, Photoshop is not going to be able to distinguish what you want and what you don't want as you use it. The next tool in the set works very similarly, only it gives you more choices that the Spot Healing Brush can't. When using the Healing Brush tool, you actually have to choose where you'd like to sample from. In order to set our sample location, we just have to press and hold Alt as we click. You can see the indication that we are setting the sample by the change in cursor when we press and hold the Alt key. Now Photoshop is still trying to guess for us, but it's using the sample that we set for it as a guide. The next tool that we have is the Patch tool. Again, very similar, but it gives us a bit more freedom for what we want to specifically accomplish. With the Patch tool, we have to manually make a selection as with the Lasso tool, then drag our selection over to set our sample. This allows us to make some pretty major changes while making it seem fairly realistic. Next up is the Content Aware Move tool. Think of this as the rest of our healing tools, but instead of painting over blemishes, this allows us to move things in our image while making it seem like they belong there all along. I'm going to go up to my lasso tool and make a selection around her mouth. Then I will switch back to the Content-Aware Move tool and click and drag her mouth up to her forehead. You can see that Photoshop has used this same content-aware technology to heal this location after I move the mouth from it. And one thing that makes this tool extra neat is that we can change some of its options after we've already moved it. If we click this gear wheel, two number boxes come up, one for structure and one for color. These numbers indicate how much you're willing to compromise on what you've selected and allow Photoshop to take over. The higher structure is, the less Photoshop is going to change your original selection's structure. The higher color is, the more you're allowing Photoshop to automatically manipulate the color to match its surroundings. Obviously, these numbers are going to affect different selections in different ways, but I find that the best numbers in this case are 3 and 10. When we're done, we'll just deselect by hitting Ctrl-D on our keyboard. I don't know about you, but I think this poor woman has been through enough in this tutorial. We'll go over some more manipulation tools in the next video.